All right, everybody. So I missed some big news while I was away with my flu, and that was Tucker Carlson flying to Russia to interview Putin for a puff piece, Vladimir Putin. Now, this puff piece interview is 12 hours long, so we are obviously not going to be watching it all. And from what I've heard, a lot of it is literally nonsense, but I have not seen any of it at all. And I will no doubt never watch all of it in its entirety, but I want to see if I can take a small bite out of this interview and see some of the highlight moments. Now, from what I've heard, it's literally like 10 straight hours of Putin ranting about Russian history to him, while Tucker looks with a blank face. But I know at a few moments, Putin actually, says some pretty backhanded shit to Tucker. Let me see if I can find one of the clips of it. Basically, there's a clip of Putin, kind of backhandedly insulting Tucker Carlson. He said I think he was didn't you try to join the CIA and they didn't accept you? It's understandable, though. They're a very serious organization. Isn't that the quote? Or, pretty close to that. I think I got it pretty close there. That's the only bit of this interview I've seen, is the backhanded insult Putin sends at Tucker Carlson. So, we have a massive conservative demagogue who has flown across the world to visit a tyrannical world leader who is opposed to America and its values, who has jailed and held American journalists and continues to do so, all the while claiming no American journalists have offered to interview Putin to hear his side of the story on the Ukraine-Russia war. Meanwhile, hundreds of US-based people and journalists and organizations have reached out to interview him, and he's rejected them. And some of them are even imprisoned and held in his country against US law. US citizens. So, Putin even called out that lie as well, saying, no, many US journalists have wanted to talk to me, in response to Tucker saying that he is the only one. So Tucker has tried his best to make this something to puff himself up with, but Putin has such a massive ego that he won't let Tucker come out of this with anything but an ego more deflated than it was when he went in, which I find kind of funny. This is truly a meeting of two egos where Putin's ego wins through and through. Xander Hall, before you start, show chat the comment section of the video. It's the most obvious set of bots I've seen. It's hilarious. Let me see what's going on with the comments. No, I don't really see much what looks like bot comments. Mostly just conservative shitting on Biden. All right, let's take a look at this.
That's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own population with an imaginary Russian threat.
Damn, it seems to just start out of nowhere.
This is an obvious fact. And thinking people, not Philistines, but thinking people, analysts, those who are engaged in real politics, just smart people, understand perfectly well that this is a fake. They're trying to fuel the Russian threat.
The threat I think you're referring to is a Russian invasion of Poland, Latvia, expansionist behavior. Can you imagine a scenario where you sent Russian troops to Poland?
Only in one case, if Poland attacks Russia. Why? Because we have no interest in Poland, Latvia, or anywhere else. Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest. It's just threat-mongering.
One of our senior United States senators from the state of New York, Chuck Schumer, said yesterday.
So this is him basically trying to do the woe is me. People are just fear-mongering about Russia. Meanwhile, most Russian propaganda is centered around how America should be afraid of Russia's might. Yet here he is claiming oh, but it's just a narrative. He wants to have his cake and eat it too, for Russia to look like this non-aggressive, innocent, keeping to their own lanes country, but to also be able to do expansionist foreign policy.
believe that we have to continue to fund the Ukrainian effort, or U.S. soldiers, citizens could wind up fighting there. How do you assess that?
Well, if somebody has the desire to send regular troops, that would certainly bring humanity to the brink of very serious global conflict. This is obvious. Do the United States need this? What for? Thousands of miles away from your national territory. Don't you have anything
Oh, I like this.
better to do?
Don't you have anything better to do than to support Ukraine when it's thousands of miles from your territory? He's basically trying to play into like the lefty take of like, why is America getting involved with Ukraine? Why is America doing any form of foreign policy? We need to be isolationist. We need to keep to our own lane. We need to stay in our country and not do anything outside of America. We need to do no wars and no conflicts. Like, yeah. Basically, like, trying to play into the Hassan politics, because he knows that he's talking to an American audience here to an extent. Like, he knows he kind of has to tailor his rhetoric to conservative Americans who he wants to come out of this thinking, and obviously Tucker wants to come out of this thinking, man, Putin and Russia aren't that bad. Maybe it would be a good thing if they interfered with our election.
You have issues on the border, issues with migration, issues with the national debt. More than
Remember, by the way, Tucker Carlson is like a court-admitted liar. He got sued for misinformation a little while ago, and some of the evidence that came out in that were several texts in which he goes on about how much he hates Trump and he hates having to lie about liking Trump on national television because his audience wants more Trump and he hopes that Trump just dies off after the 2020 election. Like, literally just, like, exposing the fact that everything he advocates for and everything he simps for in his show is just a lie and he doesn't really believe it because he's trying to get those paychecks from Fox News. He has been exposed as a grifter in court.
$33 trillion. You have nothing better to do, so you should fight in Ukraine?
His legal defense was that he didn't actually believe any of the shit he said that was getting him sued.
Wouldn't it be better to negotiate with Russia? Make an agreement, already understanding the situation that is developing today, realizing that Russia will fight for its interests?
No. It wasn't that he didn't believe it. It was that he's not a It's that he was an entertainer and that reasonable people wouldn't take him seriously and wouldn't believe what he said, like, wouldn't believe what he's saying. So he shouldn't be held legally responsible for what he was saying. That was his legal defense. My bad. I misspoke. I misremembered.
To the end. And realizing this, actually return to common sense, start respecting our country and its interests, and look for certain solutions. It seems to me that this is much smarter and more rational. The question is, do they want it or not? Further on, President of Ukraine issued a decree prohibiting negotiations with us. Let him cancel that decree, and that's it. We have never refused negotiations.
Well, because there are no negotiations to be had. Like, Russia needs to stop invading the Ukrainian territory. What negotiations? Like, oh, well, give us this much land and we'll stop invading for now.
Indeed. We hear all the time, is Russia ready? Yes, we have not refused. It was them who publicly refused. Well, let him cancel his decree and enter into negotiations. We have never refused. And the fact that they obeyed...
Mind you, they are the ones invading. All they have to do is announce their invasion is ending and to start withdrawing troops, and the shooting would stop. Like, Russian soldiers would stop fighting because they don't enjoy fighting against Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers would stop fighting because they don't enjoy having to fight to defend their land. They would like this to be over and for them to have just won in securing their land they've lived in for, like, decades, right? Like, they just, yeah. Is he being dubbed over? Yes. Yeah, he's being dubbed over. How would Tucker be able to understand them? They both have earpieces in that are translating each other. So when Tucker speaks, a translator is speaking in Russian what Tucker said into Putin's mouthpiece. And when Putin speaks, a translator is speaking into Tucker's earpiece in English, what Putin said.
The demand or persuasion of Mr. Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, seems ridiculous and very sad to me, because as Mr. Arakamiya put it, we could have stopped those hostilities with war a year and a half ago already. But the British persuaded us and we refused this.
Let's see if things start to get interesting.
The US leadership. If you really want to stop fighting, you need to stop supplying weapons. It will be over within a few weeks. That's it. And then we can agree on some terms. Before you do that, stop. What's easier? Why would I call him? What should I talk to him about? Or beg him for what?
And what messages do you get back?
You're going to deliver such and such weapons to Ukraine? Oh, I'm afraid, please don't. What is there to...
Meanwhile, like, Russia's been continuously getting their ass kicked. I saw a post today by a Russian propaganda outlet that was, how can Ukraine hope to stand against Russia's might? And it's like 4 aircraft carriers. And then there was a community note below it that said 3 of those 4 carriers have been sunk by Ukrainian military since the start of the war. So 75% of those carriers in that image being used to display how mighty Russia is have been sunk. That has pretty much been how this war has been going since the start. Putin kind of has to talk a big game, obviously, but it's all a bluff. It's the bluffing of a world leader who knows that he started a conflict he probably can't win. He has NATO and, more importantly, the US against him on this. He can't win.
to talk about?
I just have to ask, you've said clearly that NATO expansion eastward is a violation of the promise you all were made in 1990. What messages do you get back? Do you think NATO is worried about this becoming a global war or a nuclear conflict?
At least that's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own population with an imaginary Russian threat. This is an obvious.
Yes, NATO is they're just freaking out over nothing. They're just trying to panic people over nothing, you know? It's not like we're invading a country right next door to Poland or anything like that.
It's fact. And thinking people, not Philistines, but thinking people, analysts, those who are engaged in real politics.
Oh, what the fuck? Okay, so I think this interview, like, loops or something on this channel. What the fuck? That's so weird.
The promise you all were made in 1990. What messages do you get back? Do you think NATO is worried?
Wait, yeah, this just, like, loops a shit ton. The interview's nowhere near as long.
I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovich, may return to his motherland. By the end of the day, it does not make any sense to keep him in prison in Russia. We want the U.S. Special Services to think about how they can contribute to achieving the goals our special services are pursuing.
Our special services are pursuing goals to free this American citizen who was imprisoned for being a journalist, I believe he's referring to here. But, you know, the U.S. just doesn't want him back enough, I guess. You know, our Secret Service is working really hard and trying to achieve goals to getting him to freedom, but the U.S. just doesn't want him to be free, I guess, you know? It's just how it is, you know? Like, Putin's whole thing is to just, like, lie and say some, like, the emperor's... What's the term? The emperor's new clothes, I think? Like, when everybody knows that the leader is full of shit but is too scared to say anything because they'll be beheaded. Is that the term? Like, everybody... It's one of those scenarios where, like, in a cartoon or, like, a parody skit, you've got, like, a tyrannical world leader who's like, ah, yes. You see, my political opponents have had a very hot last few nights, it seems. Oh... I've just been alerted that my political opponents all died in a fire, it seems. Miraculously, a freak accident. Man, how coincidental that I would say they had such a hot last few nights. Well, this is the first I'm hearing about any of that, and, well, I hope nothing like that happens to any of my other political opponents. I mean, I hope the person who did that isn't trying to send any kind of message. Like, that is the way that Putin talks. Through and through. That is how he talks. But he's speaking in Russian, so it doesn't really come off the same way. But if he was speaking... English, that is how he would sound. Does anybody have the clip of, Putin insults Tucker Carlson CIA? This clip is so funny. Oh yeah, here's the clip. This is the one clip I'd seen of this prior to watching this bit of the interview here on stream.
With the backing of whom?
При поддержке ЦРУ, конечно.
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand.
Хотя это серьезно.
We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand.
With the back.
How do you interpret that? How do you interpret that? That was just a backhanded insult to his face. Yeah, just take his balls, why don't you? Jesus. Yeah. Honestly, there's not really much entertaining or funny or, like, interesting stuff to come out of this interview. It's obviously just more Russian propaganda, but being, like, bounced off from by an American right-wing propagandist. It's really just a sort of showing of how in, like, Russia's pocket the Republican Party is these days, especially with the era of Trump and how Russia, you know, helped Trump get elected. That said, though, I don't really think there's much more to talk about here other than the fact this is just to show the fact that, you know, the Republican Party is anti-American and unapologetically so. Turns out the Democrats are the most American party. Who could have thunk it?